I came home to find my apartment door completely destroyed, the frame splintered, and my entire family standing in my living room like they owned the place. My mother's first words weren't an apology. They were a demand for my keys and an accusation that cut deeper than any broken lock ever could. But what could possibly justify a mother, father, and sibling forcing their way into their daughter's home without permission? I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The gym had been particularly brutal that evening. I remember because my arms were still shaking as I fumbled with my apartment keys in the parking garage. It was a Tuesday, which meant leg day, and I'd pushed myself harder than usual trying to hit a new personal record on squats. The endorphin rush was real, and I was already mentally planning my post-workout meal, probably that leftover Thai food sitting in my fridge. I lived in a modest apartment complex in downtown Portland, Oregon. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. A one-bedroom on the 4th floor with a view of the city skyline that I'd worked 3 years to afford. At 26, having my own space felt like the ultimate achievement, especially coming from a family that believed privacy was a privilege, not a right. The elevator ride up felt longer than usual. I was texting my best friend Melissa about weekend plans when the doors opened on my floor. That's when everything changed. The hallway looked normal at first. Same beige carpet, same flickering fluorescent light that maintenance kept promising to fix. But as I walked toward apartment 4C, something felt off. The air had a different quality to it, almost electric with tension. Then I saw it. My door, my beautiful, forest green door that I'd specifically requested when I signed the lease, was hanging at an unnatural angle. The frame was completely shattered, with chunks of wood scattered across the hallway floor like confetti at the world's worst party. The deadbolt I'd installed for extra security was dangling uselessly, still locked, but no longer attached to anything meaningful. My heart dropped into my stomach. Every true crime podcast I'd ever listened to came flooding back. Home invasion, burglary. I should call the police. I should not go inside. That's when I heard my mother's voice. Told you the lock would give way if you hit it hard enough, Dennis. I froze, my phone still in my hand, finger hovering over the emergency call button. That was definitely Patricia Thornton's voice, my mother, coming from inside my apartment. What in the world was she doing here? And who was Dennis? My father's name was Michael. Wait, Dennis, my brother. Dennis Thornton Jr., named after our grandfather. I stepped through the destroyed doorway, pieces of the frame crunching under my sneakers, and found myself staring at a scene that belonged in a dark comedy sketch, not my actual life. There, in my living room, stood all three of them. My mother, Patricia, dressed in what I could only describe as a breaking and entering pantsuit, navy blue with sensible flats. My father, Michael, looking uncomfortable in his weekend khakis and a polo shirt that had definitely seen better days. And my brother, Dennis, 28 years old and holding what appeared to be a small battering ram, not a metaphorical battering ram. An actual honest-to-God handheld battering ram, the kind you see police use in movies. Where did you even get that? Were the first words out of my mouth, pointing at the medieval-looking contraption in my brother's hands. Dennis had the decency to look slightly sheepish. Amazon, 2-day shipping. You ordered a battering ram off Amazon? My voice was climbing octaves I didn't know I could reach. It's actually classified as a tactical entry tool, he corrected, as if that made any of this better. My mother stepped forward, her expression shifting from surprise to something harder, more determined. This was the face she wore during family interventions, during serious talks, during every moment she'd decided she knew better than everyone else in the room. "Emma, we need to talk," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone that meant she'd already made up her mind about something and was merely informing me of her decision. "You destroyed my door." I gestured wildly at the carnage behind me. "You broke into my apartment." "What could possibly—" "We had no choice," my father interjected, speaking for the first time. Michael Thornton was normally the quiet one, the peacekeeper. the man who'd rather read his newspaper than engage in family drama. Seeing him here, participating in what was essentially a home invasion, sent chills down my spine. No choice? I repeated, my gym bag sliding off my shoulder and hitting the floor with a thud. What are you talking about? My mother crossed her arms, a gesture I knew well. It was her "I'm the parent and you're the child" stance. One that had lost its effectiveness around the time I turned 18, but that she'd never stopped using. You weren't answering your phone, she stated, as if this explained everything. I pulled out my phone, checking the screen. 3 missed calls, all from my mother, all within the last 45 minutes while I'd been at the gym with my phone in my locker. So you broke down my door? Mom, I was at the gym. For an hour. People don't answer their phones at the gym. It's been 3 days since we've heard from you, Dennis added, setting the battering ram down against my coffee table, which I now noticed had been moved aside to make room for their little breaking and entering operation. 3 days? I tried to remember the last time I'd spoken to any of them. Sunday dinner. I'd skipped it because Melissa had gotten us tickets to a concert. I'd sent a text to the family group chat explaining I couldn't make it. I texted you. I told you I had plans. A text, my mother said the word like it was something dirty, is not the same as a phone call, Emma Louise Thornton. The full name. She'd pulled out the full name. This was worse than I thought. You still haven't explained why my door is in pieces, I said, trying to keep my voice level despite the rage building in my chest. Even if you were worried, even if you couldn't reach me, you could have called the building manager. You could have called the police for a wellness check. You could have done literally anything other than this. My father shifted his weight from foot to foot, a tell that meant he was uncomfortable but was going to back my mother anyway. 43 years of marriage had trained him well. The building manager wasn't answering either, he offered weakly. It's 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. He's probably having dinner with his family, which is what normal people do instead of committing property crimes. Don't be dramatic, my mother snapped. This is family property. This is my property. My name is on the lease. I pay the rent. You can't just... We pay your rent, my mother interrupted. And there it was. The real issue, the thing that had been lurking beneath, every family interaction since I'd moved out, the room fell silent except for the sound of traffic. Outside and someone's television playing through the thin walls. Not anymore, I said quietly. I've been paying my own rent for 8 months now. My mother's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, disbelief, confusion. And then, most tellingly, anger. That's impossible, she said flatly. Your salary doesn't cover... I got a promotion. In March. I've been meaning to tell you. But Sunday dinners always seem to be about Dennis's new business venture or Dad's golf game, and I trailed off, realizing how pathetic it sounded that I couldn't find time to share good news with my own family. Dennis looked genuinely surprised. You got promoted? To what? Senior marketing analyst. 20% raise plus bonuses. My brother actually smiled. That's great, Em, seriously. But my mother wasn't smiling. She was staring at me like I'd just announced I was joining a cult. Why didn't you tell us? She asked. And for a moment, just a moment, she sounded hurt rather than angry. That's the moment I should have softened. That's the moment I should have explained that I wanted to prove I could do it on my own first. That I wanted to be sure the promotion would stick before I made a big announcement. That I was tired of being treated like I couldn't handle adult responsibilities. But I didn't say any of that. Because my door was still hanging off its hinges, and my family was still standing in my living room like they had every right to be there, and the violation of it all was sitting heavy in my chest. You destroyed my door, I said again, each word deliberate and cold. You need to leave, now. Nobody moved. The standoff in my living room felt like something out of a Western movie, except instead of tumbleweeds and dusty saloons, we had IKEA furniture and the faint smell of the lavender candle I'd left burning that morning. My mother's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching near her temple that I recognized from childhood arguments. We're not leaving until we discuss why you've been hiding things from us. Hiding things? I let out a laugh that came out harsher than I intended. I got a promotion at work. That's not hiding. That's called being an adult with a career. Adults don't report every single life update to their parents like it's breaking news. See? This is exactly what we were worried about, Dennis chimed in, and I noticed he'd moved to stand slightly behind our mother, like he was her backup dancer in this absurd confrontation. You've been pulling away from the family. Missing dinners, not returning calls. One dinner. I missed one Sunday dinner in the last 6 months. 2, my mother corrected. You also missed the one in April when your Aunt Carol was visiting from Sacramento. I had to think about that. April was 7 months ago. You're keeping a tally of missed dinners from 7 months ago? Do you have a spreadsheet? Is there a color-coded chart I should know about? My father finally spoke up again, his voice tired. Emma, we're not here to attack you. We were genuinely worried. When you didn't answer your phone, and then we called the gym and they said you'd already left. Wait, you called the gym? The invasion of privacy was reaching new levels. You called Planet Fitness and asked about me? The young man at the front desk was very helpful, my mother said, completely missing the point. He checked you out of the system at 6:47 p.m. It's now 7:23. That's a 36-minute window where we had no idea where you were. I stared at her, genuinely speechless for a moment. Mom, 36 minutes is not a missing person case. That's called existing in the world. I could have stopped for gas, or grabbed a coffee, or sat in my car listening to music. Normal people don't track their adult children's movements down to the minute. Normal families stay in touch, she countered. Normal families don't shut each other out. There it was again, that word, shut out. As if maintaining healthy boundaries was the same as slamming a door in their faces. Though given the current state of my actual door, maybe the metaphor was a bit too on the nose. Dennis cleared his throat. Look, Em, I know this seems extreme. The door thing was, yeah, it was too much. He shot a look at our mother, who remained stone-faced. But we did try the building manager first. We knocked on the door for like 10 minutes. Mrs. Chen from across the hall even came out and said she hadn't seen you all day. Of course, Mrs. Chen had gotten involved. The 72-year-old retired teacher who treated the 4th floor like her personal neighborhood watch territory. I made a mental note to have a very awkward conversation with her later. So your logical next step was property destruction? I gestured at the door again, because apparently we were all just going to stand around pretending there wasn't a pile of wood splinters in my hallway. You didn't think to maybe wait another hour? Call Melissa? Try literally anything else? We did call Melissa, my mother said, pulling her phone from her purse. She said you were at the gym, but that was over an hour ago when I first called her. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now back to where we left off. The betrayal stung. I'd have to have words with Melissa too, though I understood her position. My mother could be incredibly persuasive, especially when she was in full worry mode. So let me get this timeline straight, I said. My marketing analyst brain automatically organizing the information into a logical sequence. You couldn't reach me for 3 days, which was actually me sending a text about missing one dinner. Then today you called a few times over 45 minutes while I was at the gym. You called the gym. You called my best friend. You called the building manager. You interrogated my neighbor. And then, after all of that, you decided the appropriate response was to buy a battering ram off Amazon and break into my home. Put that way, even my father looked uncomfortable. When you list it like that, it sounds unreasonable, Dennis muttered. That's because it is unreasonable. My voice was rising again, and I forced myself to take a breath. Getting emotional would just give my mother more ammunition for her Emma is being dramatic argument. Do you understand that what you did is actually illegal? This is breaking and entering. I could call the police right now. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. My mother's eyes went cold in a way I'd only seen a handful of times in my life, usually reserved for people who wronged her children. The irony that she was now one of those people seemed lost on her. You would call the police on your own family, she said. Not a question, but a statement dripping with judgment. You broke into my home. We were worried about you. That doesn't give you the right to commit crimes, Mom. We were shouting now, really shouting, and I could hear footsteps in the hallway. Great. The neighbors were definitely getting a show tonight. This would be the talk of the building for weeks. My father stepped between us, hands raised in a placating gesture. Okay, everyone needs to calm down. Patricia, Emma has a point about the door. We should have waited longer. Emma, your mother has been beside herself with worry ever since you started pulling away from family gatherings. I went to a concert. I practically screamed. One concert? 3 months ago! I'm not pulling away. I'm just living my life. A life that apparently doesn't include your family anymore. My mother shot back, and there was something in her voice now, something raw and hurt underneath the anger. That stopped me. Because underneath all the boundary violations and helicopter parenting and complete disregard for my privacy, there was something real there. Fear. My mother was scared. But scared of what? Mom, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. What is this really about? Because I don't believe that missing one dinner and not answering my phone for an hour caused you to buy a battering ram and break down my door. Something else is going on. She looked away, her arms still crossed, her whole posture defensive. For a long moment, I thought she wasn't going to answer. Then she did something I hadn't seen her do in years. She cried, not sobbing or dramatic tears, but quiet ones that slipped down her cheeks as she stared at a spot on my wall somewhere above my left shoulder. Sarah Morrison's daughter moved to Seattle last year, she said quietly. She called Sarah every Sunday. Every single Sunday for 6 months. Until she didn't. Sarah tried calling her back, but Emily wasn't answering. Though she was just busy with her new job, her new life. 3 weeks later, the police found her. My stomach dropped. Found her? Carbon monoxide leak, my father said softly. She'd been dead in her apartment for almost a week before anyone thought to check on her in person. The air left my lungs. Sarah Morrison was my mother's closest friend, and had been since before I was born. I'd grown up playing with Emily, though we'd lost touch after college when she'd moved away. I had no idea. When did this happen? I asked. March, Dennis answered. Right around the time you got your promotion. Mom's been terrified ever since. Every missed call, every unreturned text, she thinks. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. My mother wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, still not looking at me. I know it's irrational. I know you're fine, that you're just busy, that you have your own life. But when you didn't answer today, and the gym said you'd already left, and you still weren't home, She finally met my eyes. I couldn't stop thinking about Sarah, about how she waited, about how if someone had just checked earlier. The anger that had been burning in my chest began to transform into something more complicated. I was still furious about the door, still violated and angry about the invasion of privacy. But I also understood, perhaps for the first time, that this wasn't really about me at all. You should have told me, I said quietly, about Emily, about why you've been so anxious. I didn't want to burden you with it, she said, which was such a typical mom response that I almost laughed. So instead, you broke down my door. She had the grace to look embarrassed. Your father said we should wait. Dennis suggested calling the police for a wellness check. I overruled them both. At least she was taking responsibility. That was something. I looked around at my family, at the destroyed door frame, at the battering ram still leaning against my coffee table like the world's most aggressive conversation piece. This was going to be a story for the ages. But first we had some serious boundaries to establish. Okay, I said, surprising myself with the word. Here's what's going to happen next. 3 pairs of eyes fixed on me, waiting. My mother had composed herself, wiping away the last traces of tears with a tissue Dennis had handed her. The revelation about Emily Morrison hung in the air like smoke, changing the texture of everything that had happened before it. But understanding where someone's coming from doesn't mean accepting their actions. My therapist had drilled that into me over the past year of sessions. Empathy and boundaries aren't mutually exclusive. First, I said, keeping my voice level and clear, you're going to pay for a new door. Not just the door itself, but professional installation and any fees the building charges for emergency repairs. I'm guessing that's going to run about $1,500 minimum. My father nodded immediately. Of course. That's only fair. Second, I continued, holding up 2 fingers, we're going to establish some ground rules about communication and emergencies. Real rules, not the implied expectations that apparently exist in your heads. Emma, my mother started, but I cut her off. No, Mom. You don't get to interrupt right now. You broke into my apartment. The least you can do is listen. I waited until she nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line. If you can't reach me for 24 hours, a full 24 hours, you can start to worry. 45 minutes is not an emergency. 3 days of text-only communication is not ghosting. What if something's really wrong? Dennis asked, and at least he sounded genuine rather than argumentative. Then you call the police for a wellness check. That's what they're there for. That's the socially acceptable legal way to handle it. I pointed at the battering ram. That is not. The police take forever to respond to wellness checks, my mother argued. I looked it up. It can take hours, sometimes days if they're busy. Then you wait hours or days, I said firmly, because the alternative is this. I gestured around the room. The alternative is destroying my property, violating my privacy, and damaging our relationship, possibly beyond repair. That landed. I could see it in my mother's face, the way her expression crumbled slightly at the edges. My father looked down at his shoes. Dennis shifted his weight uncomfortably. Beyond repair? My mother echoed, her voice smaller than before. Mom, you broke down my door. I felt my own throat tightening with emotion, but I pushed through it. You didn't trust me enough to be okay. You didn't trust me enough to just be living my life. You treated me like a child who can't take care of herself, and you did it in the most destructive way possible. I was scared, she whispered. I know. And I'm sorry about Emily, I really am. I can't imagine what Sarah is going through, what you've been going through watching your best friend deal with that loss. I took a breath. But I'm not Emily, and you can't protect me from everything by controlling my every move. That's not love, Mom. That's fear disguising itself as love. The silence that followed was heavy. Somewhere in the building, someone was cooking dinner. I could smell garlic and onions wafting through the broken doorway. Normal life, continuing around us while we dealt with our decidedly abnormal situation. What's the third rule? My father asked quietly. I hadn't planned on a third rule, but one crystallized in my mind as he asked. Therapy? Family therapy? All of us. If we're going to move forward from this, we need professional help figuring out how to be a family that respects boundaries. I'm not going to therapy, my mother said automatically, her defenses snapping back into place. There's nothing wrong with wanting to protect your child. There's something wrong with how you're doing it, I countered. And if you won't go to therapy, then we need to seriously reassess how much contact we have. Because I can't live like this, Mom. I can't spend my life worried that every time I don't answer a phone call, you're going to show up with a SWAT team. That's not fair. You bought a battering ram. The words exploded out of me. You bought a battering ram, and you used it to break into my home. How am I asking you to talk to a professional therapist less fair than that? Dennis raised his hand slightly like we were in a classroom. For what it's worth, I think therapy is a good idea. I'll go. Of course you'll go, my mother snapped at him. You're always so eager to side against me. I'm not siding against you, Dennis said, and there was an edge to his voice I rarely heard. I'm siding with sanity. Em's right. What we did today was insane. What you've been doing for months has been increasingly controlling, and I've been going along with it because I didn't want to deal with the fallout of disagreeing with you. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. Controlling? Mom, you call me twice a day, Dennis said. Every day. If I don't answer by the second ring, you assume something's wrong. You showed up at my office last month because I forgot to text you good morning. My coworkers think you're unhinged. I stared at my brother. I'd known our mother was anxious, but I hadn't realized the extent of it. She showed up at your office? With lunch, he said dryly, to make sure I was eating properly. I'm 28 years old with a master's degree in business administration, and my mother brought me a turkey sandwich because I didn't text her before 9 a.m. My father rubbed his face with both hands. Patricia, we've talked about this. After Emily, it's been getting worse. I'm trying to keep my family safe. My mother's voice broke. Is that such a terrible thing? In a world where people die from carbon monoxide and car accidents and random violence, is it so wrong that I want to know my children are alive and well? Not wrong, I said gently, feeling the anger start to ebb away, replaced by something sadder and more complicated. But the way you're doing it isn't sustainable. You're not keeping us safe, Mom. You're suffocating us. And eventually, we're going to have to choose between our relationship with you and our own mental health. She sat down on my couch, suddenly looking much older than her 56 years. I don't know how to stop being afraid. That's why we need therapy, my father said, moving to sit beside her. He took her hand, and I noticed how naturally the gesture came, how many years of partnership were contained in that simple touch. All of us. We need to learn how to be a family again without the fear of running the show. My mother looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw her not as the overbearing parent who couldn't let go, but as a woman who was genuinely struggling. If I agree to therapy, will you come to Sunday dinners again? It was such a mom question, trying to negotiate even in defeat, that I almost smiled. I'll come to Sunday dinners when I can, but I need you to understand that sometimes I'll have other plans, and that's okay. It doesn't mean I don't love you. It means I have a life. And if we can't reach you? She asked. Give it 24 hours. Then call for a wellness check. But Mom, I waited until she met my eyes. I'm going to be okay. Most of the time when you can't reach me, I'm just going to be at the gym, or sleeping, or living my life. You have to trust that I can take care of myself. She nodded slowly, though I could see the fear still lurking in her eyes. This wasn't going to be fixed in one conversation, not even close. But it was a start. Now, I said, looking at all three of them, you need to leave. I have to figure out how to secure my apartment for the night, and I need some space to process all of this. Let me call a locksmith, my father offered, pulling out his phone. We'll get someone out here tonight, even if it costs extra for emergency service. And I'll stay with you until they arrive, Dennis added. Make sure you're safe. If that's okay with you. I looked at my brother, really looked at him, and saw the quiet solidarity there. He'd been dealing with this too in his own way. We'd have to talk more later, compare notes on survival strategies for loving but overwhelming parents. Yeah, I said. That's okay. My mother stood slowly, gathering her purse, her movements careful and defeated. My father guided her toward the door, or what was left of it, with a gentle hand on her back. At the threshold, she turned back to me. I'm sorry, she said, and this time it sounded like she meant it. About the door. About all of it. I can't lose you too. You're not going to lose me, I said. But you have to let me live, she nodded. Tears threatening again, and then they were gone, their footsteps echoing down the hallway, leaving Dennis and me standing in the wreckage of my living room. So, Dennis said after a moment, that battering ram is actually pretty cool. Want to keep it as a conversation piece? Despite everything, I laughed. Absolutely not. That thing is cursed. Fair enough. He picked it up, testing its weight. I'll return it. Amazon's return policy is pretty generous. You're going to return a used battering ram to Amazon? They've seen weirder. He grinned. Trust me, I work in e-commerce. Nothing surprises them anymore. And just like that, some of the tension broke. We weren't okay, not by a long shot. But we were going to be. Eventually. The locksmith arrived 40 minutes later, a tired-looking man in his 50s who took one look at my door and whistled low. What happened here? Ex-boyfriend? Family, I said. He nodded like that and explained everything. Say no more. I've seen worse. Somehow I believed him. The new door was installed by 10 p.m., solid oak. with a reinforced frame and a deadbolt that the locksmith assured me could withstand a small army. I didn't tell him that was exactly what I needed it for. Dennis left shortly after, giving me an awkward but genuine hug at the door. "Call me if you need anything," he said. "And Em, I meant what I said about therapy. I think it'll be good for all of us. Even if Mom fights it the whole way, especially then." He smiled tiredly. "Someone needs to be the voice of reason in this family, and apparently that's going to be us." After he left, I stood in my apartment, truly alone for the first time since coming home from the gym, and let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. The violation, the anger, the fear that maybe my family would never see me as an actual adult, and underneath it all, the guilt. Because despite everything, part of me understood why my mother had done it. I called Melissa. She picked up on the first ring. "Oh my God, Emma, I am so sorry. Your mom made it sound like you'd been missing for days and might be lying dead somewhere. I didn't know she was going to—" "It's fine," I interrupted, collapsing onto my couch. "Well, it's not fine, but I understand. She can be very convincing when she's in panic mode. What happened? Did you really come home to find them inside your apartment?" I filled her in on everything: the destroyed door, the Amazon battering ram, the revelation about Emily Morrison, the therapy ultimatum. Melissa listened without interrupting, which was one of the many reasons we'd been best friends since college. "Jesus," she breathed when I finished. That's intense. Are you okay?" "Honestly, I don't know yet." I pulled a throw pillow into my lap, hugging it. Part of me is furious. Part of me feels guilty for not realizing how badly Mom was struggling. And part of me is just exhausted. "You're allowed to feel all of those things," Melissa said firmly. "Your mom crossed a major line, even if she had reasons for being scared. You don't owe her forgiveness just because she was worried." "I know, but I also can't just cut them off completely. They're still my family. Hence the therapy." I agreed. "Speaking of which, do you know any good family therapists? I have a feeling I'm going to be the one researching options and making the appointment." "I'll text you the name of the woman my sister's family saw when they were dealing with boundary issues with my mom. She's supposed to be really good, doesn't let anyone bulldoze the conversation." We talked for another hour about everything and nothing. Her terrible date from the weekend, the new coffee shop that opened downtown, whether we should sign up for that pottery class we'd been considering. Normal life stuff. It helped ground me, reminded me that this crisis didn't define my entire existence. After we hung up, I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and opened my laptop. Despite the exhaustion, I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep without processing everything in writing. I'd kept a journal since high school, and there was something about putting words on a page that helped me make sense of my thoughts. Tuesday, October 17th, 11:47 p.m. My mother broke into my apartment today. I never thought I'd have to write that sentence about my own life. But here we are. I started typing, fingers flying across the keyboard, getting it all out. The shock of seeing my destroyed door, the surreal quality of finding my entire family in my living room like they'd been invited, the confrontation, the tears, the revelations. By the time I finished, it was past midnight and I'd written over 3,000 words, but I felt better, clearer. I sent the therapist information to my family group chat with a simple message. Dr. Rebecca Walsh specializes in family dynamics and boundary issues. I'll make an appointment for all of us. Non-negotiable. The response from my father came within 2 minutes. Thank you, Emma. I'll make sure we're all there. My mother's response took longer, almost 15 minutes. Just, okay. Dennis sent a thumbs-up emoji and a gif of someone saying, "We got this." It was so typically Dennis that I smiled despite myself. I slept fitfully that night, waking every few hours to the sound of footsteps in the hallway that turned out to be other residents going about their normal lives. The new door held firm, but my sense of security had been thoroughly shattered. It would take time to rebuild. The next morning, I called in sick to work. My boss, a woman in her 40s named Rachel, who I'd always gotten along with, Didn't pry when I said it was a family emergency. "Take the time you need," she said. "We'll manage." I spent Wednesday in a fog, alternating between mindlessly scrolling social media and staring at my ceiling. Mrs. Chen knocked around lunchtime with a container of homemade soup. I heard the commotion. "Yesterday," she said when I opened the door. She peered at the new door frame with interest. "Very sturdy. Good choice." "Thanks, Mrs. Chen. Your mother was very worried about you." She fixed me with a knowing look. "But worried doesn't mean right." I blinked at her, surprised. "You told her you hadn't seen me all day. You helped her work herself into a panic. I told her the truth. I hadn't seen you." Mrs. Chen handed me the soup container. What she chose to do with that information was her choice. Bad choice, clearly. She gestured at the door, but her choice nonetheless. "Did you see them break in?" "I heard them. Consider calling the police." She shrugged. "But then I heard your mother's voice and thought, this is family business. Family business is complicated. That's one word for it." She patted my arm. "Eat the soup. Vegetables and tofu. Good for stress." After she left, I found myself smiling despite everything. Mrs. Chen had lived through the Cultural Revolution in China, immigrated to America with nothing but 2 suitcases and determination, and raised 3 successful children as a single mother after her husband died. If she said family business was complicated, I'd take her word for it. I called Dr. Walsh's office that afternoon. The receptionist was efficient and kind, working me into a cancellation slot for Friday afternoon. "Dr. Walsh had a family cancellation," she explained. 4 people, right? We can accommodate that." "Perfect," I said, already dreading telling my mother we had an appointment in 2 days. She'd either have a million excuses or would try to take over the entire session. Possibly both. Thursday brought an unexpected visitor. I was in my pajamas, rewatching episodes of a cooking show I'd already seen 3 times, when someone knocked on my new door. I checked the peephole, a habit I'd already developed in just 2 days, and saw Dennis standing there. With a bag from my favorite Thai restaurant, "I brought pad Thai and an apology," he called through the door. "The apology is on behalf of the family. The pad Thai is just from me." I opened the door. "You don't need to apologize. You tried to talk Mom out of it. Not hard enough." He came inside, heading straight for my kitchen to grab plates. "I should have called you to warn you what she was planning. Or I should have refused to help. Instead, I went along with it because it was easier than standing up to her." We sat at my small dining table, and for a while, we just ate in comfortable silence. The pad Thai was perfect. Just the right amount of spice, plenty of peanuts, still hot from the restaurant. "How long has it been this bad?" I asked eventually. "With Mom, I mean." The constant check-ins, the anxiety. Dennis set down his fork. "It's been building since we were kids, but it got exponentially worse after Emily died. Before that, it was just a normal mom's worry. Annoying but manageable. After, it's like a switch flipped. Suddenly, every unanswered call was a potential tragedy. And Dad just goes along with it? Dad picks his battles. Always has." Dennis took a sip of water. He pushed back on some of the crazier stuff, like she wanted to install tracking apps on both our phones. He put his foot down on that one. But the constant calling, the drop-ins, the need to know where we are at all times. I think he sees it as the price of peace. That's not healthy. No? Dennis agreed. It's really not. Which is why therapy is so important. We can't keep enabling her anxiety, but we also can't just cut her off. She needs professional help processing Emily's death and her fear of losing us. I studied my brother, seeing him differently than I had before. We'd always gotten along fine, but we weren't particularly close. He was 2 years older and had always been focused on his business ventures and networking events. I'd assumed he had it all figured out, that he was the golden child who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Apparently, we'd both been making assumptions. "I'm glad you came over," I said. "And not just for Thai food," he grinned. "Thai food doesn't hurt, though. It really doesn't." We spent the next hour talking, really talking, about our childhoods, about the patterns we'd noticed in our family, about our own struggles with independence and guilt. Dennis admitted he'd been in individual therapy for 6 months already, working through his tendency to be a people pleaser and his fear of disappointing our parents. "It's helping," he said. "But I think family therapy is going to be crucial. Mom needs to hear from a professional that her behavior isn't normal or sustainable. Think she'll actually listen? I think she'll fight it at first. But Mom's not stupid. She knows something's wrong, even if she can't admit it yet." He stood, gathering our empty plates. "She knows she crossed a line Tuesday. A big one. That's why she agreed to therapy at all." After Dennis left, I felt more hopeful than I had since coming home to my destroyed door. This situation was messy and complicated and far from resolved. But maybe, with professional help and genuine effort from everyone involved, we could find our way to something healthier. I picked up my phone and did something I hadn't done in 2 days. I called my mother. She answered immediately. "Emma?" "Hi, Mom. I just wanted to let you know I made an appointment with Dr. Walsh for Friday at 4 p.m. All 4 of us." Silence on the other end. Then, "I'll be there." "Good." I paused. "And Mom?" "I'm okay. I'm safe. You don't need to worry. I always worry," she said quietly. "That's what mothers do." "I know. But we're going to work on finding a better balance, okay?" "Okay, it wasn't much, but it was a start. And sometimes a start is all you need." Dr. Rebecca Walsh's office was nothing like I expected. Instead of the sterile, clinical space I'd imagined, it looked more like someone's comfortable living room. Soft gray couches arranged in a circle, plants in every corner, warm lighting that felt welcoming rather than harsh. A bookshelf lined one wall, filled with titles about family systems, trauma, and communication. We arrived separately, which probably said something about the state of our family. I got there first, 15 minutes early because I'm pathologically punctual. Dennis showed up 10 minutes later, wearing a button-down shirt like he was going to a job interview. My father arrived exactly on time, and my mother came rushing in 3 minutes late, apologizing profusely to the receptionist, Dr. Walsh, emerged from her office at exactly 4 p.m. She was younger than I, expected, maybe early 40s, with natural gray streaks in her dark hair and glasses that gave her a thoughtful, observant look. She wore casual professional clothing, slacks and a simple sweater that put everyone at ease. "The Thornton family," she said with a warm smile that reached her eyes. "Come on in." We filed into her office like students heading to the principal's office, everyone suddenly very interested in their shoes. Dr. Walsh gestured to the seating arrangement. "Sit wherever feels comfortable. There's no assigned seating here." I watched the family dynamics play out in real time. My father moved toward one end of the couch. My mother immediately sat next to him, close enough that their shoulders touched. Dennis took the armchair to their left. I chose the love seat opposite Dr. Walsh, maintaining some distance from everyone else. Dr. Walsh noticed. Of course she noticed. That's what we were paying her for. "So," she said, settling into her chair with a notebook and pen. "Thank you all for coming. I know it's not easy to start therapy, especially as a family unit. Emma, you made the appointment. Would you like to start by telling me what brought you here?" All eyes turned to me. I took a breath. My mother broke into my apartment 4 days ago using a battering ram because I didn't answer my phone for 45 minutes. Dr. Walsh's expression didn't change, but I saw her pen pause over her notebook for just a fraction of a second. "That's quite an opening statement. Patricia, is that accurate?" My mother's back straightened. "It sounds worse when she says it like that. How would you say it?" Dr. Walsh asked, her tone neutral and curious rather than accusatory. I was concerned about my daughter's welfare. She hadn't been in contact with us for several days, and when she didn't answer her phone, I became worried. We tried multiple ways to reach her and ensure she was safe. When that didn't work, we made the decision to enter her apartment to conduct a wellness check. "A wellness check," I repeated, unable to keep the sarcasm out of my voice. "Is that what we're calling home invasion now?" "Emma," Dr. Walsh said gently, "we'll get to your feelings. Patricia, you said Emma hadn't been in contact for several days. Can you elaborate on that?" "She missed Sunday dinner and only sent a text. She didn't call to explain or apologize. Then for the next few days, she didn't return my calls." I returned your texts, I interjected. I just didn't call back immediately because I was working. Dr. Walsh held up a hand. We're going to establish a ground rule right now. One person speaks at a time. No interrupting. Everyone will get a chance to share their perspective. She looked at my mother. Patricia, continue. My mother's jaw tightened. She's been pulling away from the family for months. Missing dinners, not calling as often, being vague about her life. And then that Tuesday, she left the gym but didn't come home for over half an hour. No one knew where she was. After what happened to Sarah Morrison's daughter, I couldn't just sit and wait. Tell me about Sarah Morrison's daughter, Dr. Walsh said, leaning forward slightly. The room temperature seemed to drop. My mother's face crumpled, and my father reached over to take her hand. Emily, my mother said quietly. She was Emma's age. She moved to Seattle for a job. We, Sarah and I, we used to joke about how independent our girls were, how they were making their own way in the world. Emily called every Sunday. Until she didn't. Sarah thought she was just busy. 3 weeks later, she couldn't finish. Carbon monoxide poisoning, my father said. She died alone in her apartment. If someone had checked on her sooner... Dr. Walsh nodded slowly, making notes. When did this happen? March, Dennis said. About 8 months ago? And Patricia, how has Emily's death affected you? My mother looked up, tears streaming down her face. Every time my phone rings, I think it's going to be the police telling me one of my children is dead. Every time they don't answer, I imagine them lying on the floor, alone, dying, with no one there to help them. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I just keep thinking about Sarah, about how she waited, about how if she'd just checked sooner. Mom, I said softly, my anger momentarily forgotten. I didn't know it was this bad, because you're never around anymore. The words burst out of her. You're so busy with your new job and your new life that you don't see what's happening to your own family. Patricia, Dr. Walsh interjected calmly, I hear that you're in a lot of pain, but I want you to notice something. You just shifted from talking about your fear and grief to blaming Emma. Can you see how those are different things? My mother blinked, caught off guard. I'm not blaming her. I'm just saying, you said because you're never around anymore, Dr. Walsh pointed out. That's placing responsibility for your anxiety on Emma's behavior, rather than recognizing it as your response to trauma. Does that distinction make sense? My mother opened her mouth, closed it, then nodded slowly. Michael, Dr. Walsh turned to my father. You've been quiet. What's your perspective on all of this? My father shifted uncomfortably. I think Patricia has been struggling since Emily died. I've tried to support her, but I also think maybe I've been enabling some behaviors that aren't healthy. Such as going along with the apartment break-in, for one. He looked at me with genuine regret. Emma, I'm sorry. I knew it was wrong, but I was more worried about upsetting your mother than protecting your boundaries. That wasn't fair to you. It was the most honest thing I'd heard my father say in years. Thank you, I said quietly. Dennis, Dr. Walsh said, you haven't shared much yet. What's your experience been? My brother leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I love my mom, but she's been suffocating both of us for months. The constant check-ins, showing up at my office, needing to know where we are every minute of every day, it's exhausting. I've been avoiding her calls because I know each one is going to turn into an interrogation about my location and activities. That's not fair, my mother protested. I'm just trying to... Patricia, Dr. Walsh interrupted gently. Remember the ground rule. Let Dennis finish. Dennis continued. I understand she's scared. After Emily, I get it. But her fear is controlling our lives. Emma and I are adults. We deserve to live without constant surveillance, even if it comes from a place of love. So you'd rather I just not care? My mother's voice rose. You'd rather I ignore you and let you end up like Emily? We'd rather you trust us, I said. Trust that we can take care of ourselves. Trust that if something's wrong, we'll reach out. Trust that we're competent adults who aren't going to die the moment you're not watching. But Emily was a competent adult, my mother shot back. Sarah trusted her too, and she still died alone. The room fell silent. This was the heart of it, the fear that no amount of rational argument could fully address. Dr. Walsh set down her pen. Patricia, what happened to Emily was a tragedy. A terrible, unpredictable tragedy. But here's what I want you to consider. Even if Sarah had called Emily every single day, even if she'd demanded constant check-ins, it might not have changed the outcome. Carbon monoxide is silent. Emily could have answered the phone in the morning and been gone by evening. But she might have mentioned feeling sick, my mother argued. She might have said something that would have made Sarah worry enough to send someone. She might have, Dr. Walsh agreed. But she also might not have. And here's the crucial point. You cannot prevent every possible tragedy by controlling your children's lives. What you can do is damage your relationship with them to the point where they start avoiding you altogether, which, from what I'm hearing, is already beginning to happen. My mother flinched like she'd been struck. I'm not saying this to hurt you, Dr. Walsh continued. I'm saying it because you came here for help, and my job is to help you see patterns that aren't serving you or your family. Your anxiety is understandable. Your grief over Emily is valid. But your response to those feelings, the constant monitoring, the boundary violations, the break-in, those behaviors are going to push your children away rather than keep them safe. So what am I supposed to do? My mother asked, her voice breaking. Just pretend I'm not terrified every time they don't answer the phone? No, Dr. Walsh said. You're supposed to get help for your anxiety and trauma. You're supposed to learn coping mechanisms that don't involve controlling other people. You're supposed to grieve Emily's death properly, instead of trying to prevent it from happening again to someone else. She looked around at all of us. This family has experienced a secondary trauma, witnessing a close friend go through an unimaginable loss. That kind of trauma ripples outward, affecting everyone. Patricia, you're showing classic signs of anxiety disorder, possibly PTSD. But you can't heal from that by trying to control external factors. You can only heal by doing the internal work. My mother sat back, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. I don't know how. That's why we're here, Dr. Walsh said. To figure that out together. She turned to her notebook, flipping to a fresh page. Here's what I'm proposing. Patricia, I want you to start individual therapy with a colleague of mine who specializes in anxiety and grief. We'll continue family sessions every other week to work on communication and boundaries. Emma and Dennis, I want you both to think about what kind of relationship you want with your parents and what boundaries you need to maintain your own mental health. And me? My father asked. You need to stop being the enabler, Dr. Walsh said bluntly. You need to start supporting healthy boundaries, even when it upsets Patricia. Being a good husband doesn't mean going along with destructive behavior. Sometimes it means saying no. My father nodded slowly. I can do that. Can you? Dr. Walsh challenged. Because based on what I've heard today, you've been saying yes to a lot of things you knew were wrong because it was easier than dealing with the fallout. You're right, he admitted. I'll work on it. Dr. Walsh checked her watch. We're about out of time for today. Before we finish, I want to establish one concrete boundary that everyone can agree to. Emma, what would be most helpful for you right now? I thought about it. A response time agreement. If I don't answer my phone or respond to text within 24 hours, then Mom can escalate her concern. But anything less than that is considered normal adult behavior, and no one gets to panic. Patricia, can you agree to that? Dr. Walsh asked. My mother hesitated, then nodded. 24 hours, yes, I can try. Not try, Dr. Walsh corrected gently. Commit. Can you commit to giving Emma 24 hours before escalating? Yes, my mother said, though I could see the effort it took. I commit to that. Good. That's our homework until the next session. Emma maintains contact within a 24-hour window when possible. Patricia practices sitting with anxiety when she doesn't hear from her children immediately. Everyone else supports this boundary. We stood to leave, the session feeling both exhausting and strangely hopeful. As we filed out, Dr. Walsh touched my arm lightly. That took courage, she said quietly. Coming here being honest. Keep it up. Outside in the parking lot, we stood in an awkward cluster by our cars. "So," Dennis said finally, "that was intense." "I think I need a drink," my father muttered. And everyone laughed nervously. My mother looked at me, her eyes red but clear. Would you like to get coffee? Just for a few minutes?" I almost said no. The old pattern would have been to retreat, to put distance between us and process everything alone. But Dr. Walsh's words echoed in my head. This was about building something new, not just avoiding what was broken. "Yeah," I said. "Coffee sounds good." The coffee shop was one of those trendy Portland spots with exposed brick walls and baristas who took their craft very seriously. My mother ordered a decaf latte. I got an Americano black. We sat at a small table by the window, watching the early evening foot traffic pass by. For the first few minutes, neither of us spoke. We just sipped our drinks, the silence stretching between us like a physical thing. It wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't hostile either. It was the silence of two people trying to figure out how to talk to each other again. "I made an appointment," my mother said finally, not meeting my eyes, "with the therapist Dr. Walsh recommended, Dr. Helen Martinez, Tuesday at 10 a.m. "That's good, Mom. Really good. I almost canceled it 3 times already." She smiled weakly. I kept picking up the phone to call the office and tell them I didn't need it, that I was fine. "But you didn't cancel?" "No." She took a sip of her latte. "Your father took my phone away and told me he'd hide it until Tuesday if I tried to cancel again." I couldn't help but smile at that. "Dad's taking his homework seriously." "He is." She finally looked at me, and I saw something I hadn't seen in her eyes in a long time. Vulnerability without the anger that usually accompanied it. "Emma, I need you to understand something. When I was standing in that hallway on Tuesday, listening to Dennis hit your door with that ridiculous battering ram, I genuinely believed you might be dead inside. In my mind, I wasn't breaking into your apartment. I was trying to save your life." "I know," I said quietly. "But Mom, I wasn't dead. I was at the gym, living my completely normal life, and that's going to keep happening. Me living my life while you're somewhere else worrying about hypothetical disasters. I'm aware of how irrational it sounds." She set down her cup, her hands trembling slightly. "Dr. Walsh said I need to sit with discomfort, that I need to learn to tolerate not knowing where you are every second. Do you have any idea how impossible that feels?" "No," I admitted. "I can't imagine what you're going through, but I also can't live my life trying to manage your anxiety. That's not fair to either of us," she nodded slowly. "Dr. Martinez, the therapist I'm seeing, specializes in anxiety disorders. Dr. Walsh said I'm showing signs of something called hypervigilance. Apparently it's common after traumatic events or exposure to trauma. Emily's death. Sarah calls me sometimes," my mother said, her voice dropping, "late at night when she can't sleep. She tells me about finding Emily, about how the apartment smelled normal, looked normal, but her daughter was just gone. About how Emily's phone was on the nightstand, fully charged, showing all the missed calls Sarah had made." She wiped her eyes. "Sarah said if she'd just driven up there one weekend to visit, if she'd just shown up unannounced, maybe she could have gotten Emily to a hospital in time. Or maybe she would have found her already gone," I said gently. "Mom, you can't rewrite someone else's tragedy into a different ending. Emily's death was horrible, but it wasn't Sarah's fault for not being intrusive enough. Wasn't it, though?" My mother's voice was sharp with pain. "If she'd been more involved, more present, then Emily might have pulled away sooner," I interrupted. "Mom, Emily was 26 years old. She was living her own life. Sarah trusted her to be okay, which is what parents are supposed to do with adult children. The tragedy isn't that Sarah gave her daughter space. The tragedy is that a silent, invisible gas leak killed a young woman with her whole life ahead of her. Those are two completely different things." My mother stared down at her latte, watching the foam slowly dissolve. "I keep thinking it could have been you. You live alone. You have a gas stove. What if there's a leak? What if you fall in the shower? What if someone breaks in? What if an asteroid hits my building?" I added. What if there's an earthquake? What if I choke on my breakfast? Mom, you can what if yourself into paralysis. There are infinite ways the world could hurt me, and you can't prevent any of them by calling me twice a day. I know that logically, she said. But knowing it and feeling it are different things. That's what therapy is for, learning to close that gap. We sat in silence again, but this time it felt more companionable. My mother pulled out her phone, then seemed to think better of whatever she was about to do and put it back in her purse. I was going to check if Dennis texted me back, she admitted. I sent him a message 20 minutes ago. And you want to send a follow-up? 3 follow-ups, she said with a weak laugh. Maybe 4. Is it bad that I'm counting the minutes until it's been 24 hours since I've heard from you so I can legitimately worry again? Yes, I said bluntly. That's exactly the kind of thing you need to work on. The 24-hour rule isn't a countdown to when you're allowed to panic. It's a boundary to help you practice tolerating uncertainty. She flinched but nodded. You're right. I don't know who I am if I'm not worrying about you kids. That statement hit me harder than I expected. Mom, you're so much more than just our mother. You have a book club. You volunteer at the library. You're an amazing cook. You have friends, hobbies, interests. When did you stop seeing yourself as a whole person? Probably around the time I had children, she said, attempting a joke, but there was truth in it. Your whole life becomes about keeping these tiny humans alive. And then they grow up. But the fear doesn't go away. It just evolves. Into breaking down doors? She actually laughed at that, a real laugh. God, that sounds insane when you say it out loud. Your father and I are going to be paying off that locksmith bill for months. You should probably return that battering ram too. I can't imagine Amazon's thrilled about that purchase history. Dennis already returned it. Apparently, the reviews he left were quite detailed. She smiled. Something about excellent for home invasions. Less good for family relationships. We both laughed then. And it felt good. Normal. Like maybe we could find our way back to something resembling a healthy mother-daughter relationship. Can I ask you something? My mother said, her tone shifting back to serious. Sure. The promotion. The one you've been paying your own rent with. Why didn't you tell us? I considered lying or softening the truth, but Dr. Walsh's voice echoed in my head about honest communication. Because I wanted to prove I could do it on my own. Without your financial support, without your involvement, without having to hear about how you knew someone at my company who could put in a good word for me. My mother looked stung. I was just trying to help, I know. But sometimes help feels like you don't trust me to succeed without intervention. I needed to know I earned this promotion because of my work, not because my mom pulled strings. I've never pulled strings, she protested. You offered to. Multiple times. Remember when I first got hired? You wanted to call the CEO because you'd met him at some charity function. I had to beg you not to. I thought I was being supportive. You were being overbearing, I said, not unkindly. There's a difference. Support is I'm proud of you. Let me know if you need anything. Overbearing is, let me fix this for you because I don't trust you to handle it yourself. She absorbed that, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. I never thought about it that way. I just wanted to make things easier for you. I don't need things to be easier. I need to know I can handle difficult things on my own. That's how I build confidence and self-reliance. You've always been so independent, my mother said softly, even as a child. You wanted to do everything yourself. Tie your own shoes, make your own lunch, ride your bike without training wheels before you are really ready. You fell so many times, and I got back up. And eventually I learned. But what if you hadn't? What if one of those falls had been serious? Then you would have been there to help me. But you let me try first. You let me fall. What changed, Mom? When did you stop trusting me to handle my own falls? She was quiet for a long time. Outside the window, the streetlights were starting to come on, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. A group of college students walked by, laughing at something on one of their phones. Normal life continuing around us? I think it was gradual, she finally said. As you got older, the stakes got higher. Little falls turned into big ones. Bad grades, friend drama, college stress, job hunting. Each stage felt more dangerous than the last. And then Emily died. And suddenly all those fears I'd been managing seemed completely justified. But they're not, I said. Emily's death was a freak accident. It wasn't caused by her being independent or her mother giving her space. It was a gas leak, a mechanical failure. It could have happened if she'd been calling home every day or never calling at all. I know that here. My mother tapped her temple. But here, she placed her hand over her heart. I'm still terrified. Then let's work on getting those two places to align. With therapy, with boundaries, with practice. She met my eyes. What if I can't? What if the anxiety is too strong? Then we'll deal with that when we get there. But Mom, you have to try. Because the alternative is losing your children to the very fear that's supposed to keep them close. Dennis is already avoiding your calls. I'm already keeping you at arm's length. If this continues, the what if you should be most worried about is, what if I push them away completely? The fear that flashed across her face told me she'd already thought about that. 24 hours, she said like a promise. I can do 24 hours. And then we go from there. She nodded, finishing the last of her latte. Thank you for agreeing to coffee. I wasn't sure you'd say yes. Honestly, I wasn't sure either. But Dr. Walsh said something that stuck with me. She said we can't heal what we don't acknowledge. So I'm acknowledging that despite everything, despite the door and the battering ram and the complete invasion of my privacy, you're still my mom. And I still want a relationship with you. Just a different one than what we've had. A healthier one. Exactly. We stood to leave, disposing of our cups and stepping out into the cool evening air. My mother paused by her car, keys in hand. Emma? Yeah? I'm proud of you. The promotion, your apartment, the way you handled this whole mess. You're stronger than I gave you credit for. It was exactly what I'd needed to hear, even if I hadn't known it. Thanks, Mom. That means a lot. I'll see you at the next session? 2 weeks. I'll be there. She nodded, then did something unexpected. She hugged me. Not the quick, obligatory hugs we usually exchanged, but a real one. The kind that said things words couldn't quite capture. I'm sorry, she whispered, for all of it. I know, I said. We're going to figure this out. When we pulled apart, she was crying again. But this time they looked like the good kind of tears. The healing kind. I watched her drive away, her taillights, disappearing into traffic, and for the first time since finding my door broken, I felt something like hope. We had a long way to go. The road to healthy boundaries and managed anxiety would be complicated and messy. There would be setbacks and arguments and moments when we all wanted to give up. But we were trying. And sometimes, trying is enough. The test came sooner than any of us expected. It was a Thursday, 3 weeks after our first therapy session. I'd been having a particularly brutal week at work. Our company was launching a new product line, and as senior marketing analyst, I was drowning in presentations, data analysis, and last-minute strategy pivots. I'd been at the office until midnight on Tuesday, back at my desk by 7 a.m. Wednesday, and by Thursday afternoon, I was running on caffeine and pure determination. My phone died sometime around 2 p.m. I noticed it when I went to check the time during a meeting, saw the black screen, and felt a brief moment of panic before remembering I'd left my charger at home. No big deal. I'd survive a few hours without it. The product launch meeting ran long. Then my boss, Rachel, called an emergency strategy session to address some concerns the CEO had raised. By the time I finally made it out of the office, it was almost 9 p.m. I was exhausted, and I'd completely forgotten about my dead phone. I got home, kicked off my shoes, and face-planted on my couch with every intention of staying there for the next 12 hours. My phone was still in my bag, still dead. I didn't think about it. I should have. The pounding on my door woke me up at 11:23 p.m. I knew the exact time because I'd fallen asleep on the couch with the TV on, and the news was displaying the time in the corner of the screen. My heart jumped into my throat. The pounding was aggressive, urgent, the kind of knocking that meant something was wrong. For a split second, I was back to that Tuesday 3 weeks ago, expecting to find my door destroyed again. I stumbled to the door, looked through the peephole, and saw Dennis. Just Dennis, thank God. Not the whole family. But he looked frantic, his hair messy like he'd been running his hands through it, his phone pressed to his ear. I yanked the door open. "Dennis? What? Jesus Christ, Em." He pushed past me into the apartment, immediately calling out, "I found her, she's okay," into his phone. Then to me, "Where the hell have you been? Your phone has been going straight to voicemail for 9 hours. 9 hours. My stomach dropped as I did the math. My phone died around 2 p.m. It was now after 11 p.m. That was more than 9 hours. "Is that Mom?" I asked, gesturing to his phone. "Mom, Dad, Melissa, your boss, Rachel. Do you have any idea how many people have been trying to reach you?" He ran a hand through his hair again. "Mom is completely losing it. She's been calling me every 15 minutes for the past 4 hours. Wait, you called Rachel?" My professional mortification was competing with my personal annoyance. "My boss?" After 7 hours of radio silence, "Yeah, we called everyone." He held the phone out to me. "Here, talk to Mom before she actually has a heart attack." I took the phone, bracing myself. "Mom?" The sound that came through was somewhere between a sob and a scream. "Emma Louise Thornton, I have been out of my mind. Where were you? Why didn't you answer your phone? I was about to call the police." "My phone died," I said, still trying to process the situation. "I was at work. I had back-to-back meetings and my phone died and I forgot to charge it." "For 9 hours." Her voice was shrill with residual panic. "You forgot for 9 hours?" "I was working, Mom. I didn't realize." I stopped, something occurring to me. "Wait, it hasn't been 24 hours yet. We agreed on 24 hours. The silence on the other end was damning. "Mom, we agreed. 24 hours before you escalate." "I tried." Her voice broke. "I tried so hard, Emma. I really did. But 8 hours turned into 9, and I kept thinking about Emily, about how Sarah waited, and I couldn't not know if you were okay." I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar frustration rise up. We'd made it 3 weeks, 3 whole weeks of her managing to stick to the boundaries. And now, at the first real test, she'd failed. "Put Dad on," I said quietly. There was a muffled conversation, then my father's voice. "Emma, Dad, you were supposed to help her manage this. That was your homework from Dr. Walsh. Support the boundaries." "I know." He sounded exhausted. "I tried, sweetheart. I really did. I told her we needed to wait until it had been a full day, but around hour 8, she was having a panic attack. A real one, not just anxiety. She couldn't breathe. I had to choose between the boundary and her immediate well-being. That stopped me. A panic attack. A real medical event, not just worry spiraling out of control. Is she okay now? She will be. Knowing you're safe is helping." He paused. "Dennis said your phone was dead?" "Yeah. Work was insane today. I didn't even think about it." "You need to think about it," he said, and there was a firmness in his voice I wasn't used to hearing. "Emma, I know we set boundaries. I know your mother needs to learn to manage her anxiety. But you also need to be more aware of how your actions affect others. Leaving your phone dead for 9 hours when your mother is in active therapy for anxiety disorder isn't fair either." I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it. Because he wasn't wrong. I'd been so focused on maintaining my boundaries that I hadn't considered my part in making this transition easier for everyone. "You're right," I said finally. "I should have charged my phone." "We all need to meet in the middle," my father said. "That's what family is. Not just boundaries, but also consideration, compassion, effort from all sides. Dennis was watching me, and I could see the agreement in his eyes. He'd been on the receiving end of our mother's panic tonight, too. "Can you put Mom back on?" I asked. Another shuffle, then my mother's voice, steadier now but still fragile. "Emma? Mom, I'm sorry. You're right that 9 hours was too long. I should have been more conscious of my phone. That's on me." I could hear her breath catch. "Really? Really? But Mom, you also broke the agreement. You were supposed to wait 24 hours. We weren't even halfway there." "I know," she whispered. "I failed." "You didn't fail. You struggled. There's a difference." I sat down on my couch, suddenly feeling the weight of the entire day. "But this is something we need to talk about in therapy. Because if you have a panic attack every time I'm unreachable for more than 8 hours, we need to figure out a different strategy. Dr. Martinez and I have been working on it," she said. "Breathing exercises, grounding techniques, cognitive reframing. But when it comes to you and Dennis, when I can't reach you, nothing works. My brain just goes straight to the worst possible scenario." "Then maybe we need medication," I said gently. "Have you talked to Dr. Martinez about anti-anxiety medication?" "She mentioned it." I said no. "Why?" "Because I don't want to need pills to be a good mother." "Mom, that's not how it works. If you had diabetes, you'd take insulin. If you had high blood pressure, you'd take medication for that. Anxiety disorder is a medical condition. There's no shame in treating it medically." "Your father said the same thing." "Because we're both right." I looked at Dennis, who was nodding emphatically. "Will you at least consider it? Talk to Dr. Martinez about options?" A long pause. Then, "Okay, I'll talk to her." "Good." I stood up, my body protesting the movement. "Now, I need to go to bed because I have another brutal day tomorrow." "But Mom, I love you." "And I'm okay. And tomorrow, when I wake up, I'm going to charge my phone first thing and text you good morning." "You don't have to." "I want to," I interrupted. "Not because you're forcing me to, but because I can see that small gestures like that actually help you." "So I'm choosing to do them. That's a compromise, right? You work on your anxiety. I work on being more communicative. We meet in the middle." "Meet in the middle," she repeated softly. "I can do that." After we hung up, I handed Dennis his phone back. He was smiling slightly. "What?" I asked. "You're good at this." "The boundary thing. The compassion thing. Balancing both." "I have a good therapist," I said. "We all do." He glanced around my apartment. "The new door's holding up well. Knock on wood. Probably shouldn't joke about that given recent history." But he was grinning. "Too soon?" "Way too soon." He headed for the door, then turned back. "For what it's worth, I think we're going to be okay. The family, I mean. It's messy and complicated, and Mom still has a long way to go. But I think we're going to figure it out." "Yeah," I agreed. "I think so too." After he left, I plugged my phone in to charge and watched the screen light up with approximately 4,000 notifications. Missed calls, texts, voicemails. Evidence of a family that loved me, even when that love sometimes manifested in destructive ways. I sent a group text to my parents and Dennis. Phone charged. "I'm safe. I love you all. See you at therapy on Monday." The responses came immediately. Dad. "Love you too, sweetie." "Sleep well." Dennis. "Night, Em. Try not to get murdered by work meetings tomorrow, Mom. I love you so much. Thank you for being patient with me." "I'm trying." I stared at that last message for a long moment. "I'm trying." 3 simple words that meant everything. I typed back. "I know you are, Mom. We all are." That's what matters. As I got ready for bed, I thought about the past 3 weeks. The destroyed door that had been replaced. The family therapy sessions that were slowly untangling years of unhealthy patterns. The coffee shop conversation that had revealed wounds I didn't know existed. Tonight's failure had actually been a step forward because we'd all handled it better than before. We weren't fixed. My mother still had panic attacks when she couldn't reach me. I still got defensive about my independence. My father still struggled with being too passive. Dennis was still figuring out his own boundaries. We were all works in progress, but we were progressing. And that was something. I climbed into bed, my phone charging on the nightstand, fully aware that tomorrow I'd wake up to another day of balancing my own needs with my family's needs. Another day of being an adult child with parents who hadn't quite learned to let go. Another day of therapy homework and boundary negotiations and complicated love. It wouldn't be easy. Family never is. But as I drifted off to sleep, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time when it came to my family. Hope. Real solid hope that we could be better. Not perfect, but better. And sometimes, better is all you need. 3 months later, my mother started taking anti-anxiety medication. 6 months later, she went 4 days without calling me and only mildly panicked. A year later, she called to apologize for something she'd done when I was 16, saying therapy had helped her realize how her anxiety had affected me even back then. We still have Sunday dinners most weeks. Sometimes I miss them, and that's okay. My mother still worries, but now she has tools to manage it. My father has learned to say no. Dennis and I have learned to be more considerate while maintaining our boundaries. The battering ram story became legendary in our family. We joke about it now, though it took a while to get there. My mother even references it in her book club when they discuss overprotective parents in fiction. Trust me, she says, I wrote the book on overprotectiveness. Literally broke down a door. My apartment door, the one that replaced the one they destroyed, has never been prettier, strong, secure. A perfect metaphor for boundaries, solid enough to protect me, but with a key I can give to people I trust. My family has that key now. Not the physical one, they learned that lesson. But the metaphorical one, access to my life, given freely because I know they'll respect the boundaries we've built together. And every time I use that key to open my door, I remember, sometimes things have to break completely before they can be rebuilt into something stronger. If you found yourself relating to this story, whether you're the one setting boundaries or the one struggling to respect them, know that you're not alone. Family dynamics are complicated. Love and control often get tangled up together. But with therapy, honest communication, and genuine effort from everyone involved, change is possible. And if you ever find yourself considering a battering ram as a solution to your problems, maybe try therapy first. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and please, for the love of all that's holy, charge your phones. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.